Welcome back to the long road and to the Camino de Santiago. Last time we crossed the Alto del Perdón and descended to the bridge town of Puente la Reina. Tonight we follow the river south into the wine country of Navarra. Settle in, let your body rest, and let the path begin. We walk through vineyards and along a Roman road 2,000 years old, past the hilltop village of Cirauqui and through quiet farming country to the medieval trading town of Estella on the banks of the Ega, 21.5 kilometers through the heart of Navarra. This is the last stage of the first chapter. If you enjoy these walks, like and subscribe so you don't miss the next stage. Now, let the morning find you in Puente la Reina. The mist is drifting above the river, and it is time to walk. The morning is still and cool in Puente la Reina. A faint mist drifts above the Arga River, softening the stone arches of the great bridge into pale, floating shapes. The air smells of river water and damp limestone. Somewhere behind you, in the narrow streets of the old town, a door opens and closes, then silence again. You stand at the entrance to the Puente de los Peregrinos, the Bridge of Pilgrims, 6 semicircular arches spanning the Arga, 110 meters of dressed stone, rising gently to its highest point at the center before descending to the far bank. The bridge is nearly 1,000 years old. It was built in the 11th century at the command of Queen Dona Mayor of Navarra for the safe passage of pilgrims crossing the river. Before the bridge, travelers had to wade or ferry across. Many drowned. The Queen ordered the bridge built so that no pilgrim would be lost to the current again. You step onto the bridge. Your footsteps sound hollow against the worn stone, a low resonance that seems to come from somewhere beneath you, from the arches themselves. The Arga flows dark and quiet below, its surface barely moving, carrying the reflected gray of the sky downstream. The bridge has a humpback profile, rising gently to its center span. As you walk, you feel the slight incline beneath your feet, and then the descent on the far side. It is barely perceptible, but your body registers it, a rising and a falling, like a single breath. The stone beneath your feet has been polished smooth by centuries of crossing. Not just pilgrims, merchants, soldiers, farmers, livestock. 1,000 years of passage, compressed into the gentle concavity worn into each paving slab. Halfway across, you pause. The river is wide here, and the mist moves slowly above its surface in thin, translucent layers. The triangular cutwaters on the upstream side of each pier divide the current into quiet V's. You can hear the water just barely, a soft murmur against stone. You look back at the bridge one last time. From this angle, you can see all 6 arches reflected in the still water below, creating perfect semicircles that join their reflections to form full ovals of stone and shadow. The geometry is ancient and exact. This is the bridge that gave the town its name, Puente la Reina, the Queen's Bridge. Before it was built, this was simply a ford on the river. The bridge changed everything. It made the crossing safe, and the safe crossing made the town. You reach the far bank and step onto a gravel path. The bridge falls behind you. Ahead, the track follows the left bank of the Arga, flat and easy, through a corridor of alder and willow trees. Their leaves are beginning to yellow at the edges, the first signs of autumn. 21.5 kilometers to Estella, the 5th day of the Camino, the last stage of the first section through the Pyrenees and Navarra. You have crossed mountains, descended through beech forests, followed rivers through valleys. Today the terrain will be gentler, undulating farmland, vineyards, hilltop villages, and an ancient Roman road. The path along the river is soft underfoot, damp earth, fine gravel, a thin carpet of fallen leaves. The alders lean over the water, their roots trailing in the current, exposed by years of slow erosion. Somewhere upstream, a bird calls. A single, clear note repeated 3 times, then silence. The willow branches trail in the current, their tips just touching the surface of the water, making tiny ripples that spread outward in overlapping circles. The light catches these ripples and breaks into fragments, scattering across the underside of the canopy in shifting patterns of gold and shadow. The path is wide enough for 2, but you walk alone. The solitude of the early morning is a gift. No conversation required, no pace to match but your own. Just the sound of your footsteps and the quiet life of the riverbank. A heron stands motionless at the water's edge, its long neck curved into a patient S, its eyes fixed on the shallows. It has the stillness of something that has been waiting for a very long time and will wait a long time more. You pass without disturbing it. The air along the river is cool and damp against your skin. It carries the mineral smell of water over stone and a faint sweetness from somewhere you cannot identify. Perhaps the last of the season's wildflowers in the grass along the bank. You walk slowly. There is no need to hurry. The path is level and the morning is young. A red kite circles high above the river valley, its forked tail tilting as it adjusts to the current of air. It makes no sound. It simply drifts, patient and unhurried, scanning the fields below. After 3 kilometers, the path bends away from the river. The Arga curves to the north, and you continue west, climbing gently through open farmland. The change is gradual. The dampness of the riverbank gives way to drier air. The shade of the willows gives way to open sky. Vineyards begin to appear on the hillsides. Rows of grapevines trained along low wires, their leaves turning crimson and gold in the early autumn light. Heavy clusters of dark fruit hang beneath the canopy. Tempranillo and Garnacha grapes, the varieties of Navarra. The vineyard rows are spaced wide enough to walk between. Each vine is gnarled and low, trained along the wire, its trunk no thicker than your wrist, but twisted with age. Some of these vines are decades old. They have survived frost and drought and hail, and they continue to bear fruit with quiet persistence. The Tempranillo grape takes its name from the Spanish word temprano, meaning early. It ripens earlier than most varieties, its thick skin darkening to a blue-black that stains your fingers if you touch it. The Garnacha, by contrast, is lighter skinned, heat-loving, producing wines of warmth and generosity. Both thrive in this landscape of dry limestone hillsides and hot summers. The smell reaches you before you see the fruit. A sweet, fermenting scent, warm and heavy, drifting from the ripening grapes. It is the smell of sugar turning slowly to alcohol in the September sun, almost intoxicating. The air itself seems thicker here, richer. Morning dew still clings to the vine leaves. Each drop catches the early light, a tiny lens refracting the colors of the sky. As the sun climbs, the dew will burn away, but for now the vineyards glitter quietly on either side of the path. The paved farm road climbs gently through the vines. The surface is smooth and easy underfoot. To your left, cereal fields spread across the flatter ground, their stubble pale gold after the harvest. To your right, the vineyard rows march up the hillside in neat, curving lines. A crested lark rises from the stubble with a stuttering song, climbing steeply into the air before hovering, wings fluttering, pouring out its melody to no one in particular. Then it drops back into the field and disappears. 5 kilometers from Puente la Reina, the village of Maneru appears on the hillside ahead. Stone houses the color of pale honey, clustered on the slope, a church tower rising above the rooftops. The village is small, perhaps 100 houses, surrounded by vineyards and cereal fields. You enter Maneru through a narrow lane that climbs between stone walls. The walls are warm to the touch, even this early in the morning. The stone holds the heat of yesterday's sun and releases it slowly through the night. You can feel it radiating gently against your palm. The village is quiet at this hour. A few windows are open and you can hear the faint sounds of morning routines inside. The clink of a cup. A voice, too soft to make out the words. These are the sounds of people beginning their day, unhurried and familiar in a village where the routine has not changed much in generations. The parish church of San Pedro stands at the heart of the village. A simple stone building, solid and plain, its tower watching over the valley below. At the edge of the settlement, you can see the ruins of a Gothic church, its walls open to the sky, its windows empty. It has been falling slowly for centuries. There is something peaceful about a ruin that no one is trying to save. It is simply being allowed to return to the earth, stone by stone, at its own pace. Grass grows between the fallen blocks. A fig tree has rooted itself in what was once the nave, its branches reaching through the space where the roof once arched. Fig trees grow in the sheltered village gardens, their broad leaves offering pools of shade. Some bear late-season fruit, the figs splitting on the branch, their purple flesh exposed and sweet. The air near them smells of warm sugar and earth. You pass through Maneru without stopping. The lane descends on the far side of the village, and the view opens suddenly to the west. There, on a rocky hilltop 3 kilometers ahead, you see Cirauqui. It is one of the most striking sights on the entire Camino, a fortified silhouette of stone houses and a church tower crowning a steep, conical hill, rising above a sea of vineyards and golden fields. The village looks as though it grew from the rock itself, which in a sense it did. The hilltop on which Cirauqui sits is a resistant outcrop of harder limestone. Over millions of years, the softer marl surrounding it has eroded away, leaving this natural fortress standing above the plain. The Romans noticed it. They settled here, leaving pottery and ceramic fragments and funerary remains in the surrounding fields. The fortified silhouette grows larger as you approach. You can begin to make out individual houses, their walls of pale stone, their rooftops of red clay tiles. The church tower rises above them all, solid and square, a landmark visible for kilometers in every direction. The medieval builders chose this hilltop for the same reason the Romans chose it before them: visibility and defense. From the summit, you can see anyone approaching from any direction. The narrow, spiraling streets could be blocked with a single cart. The village was a fortress disguised as a home. And after the Romans, the medieval builders noticed it too. They fortified the hilltop and built their streets to spiral upward, narrow and steep, easily blocked in times of danger. A village designed for defense as much as for living. The path descends into the shallow valley between Maneru and Cirauqui. Olive trees appear on the south-facing slopes, their silvery leaves catching the light as it strengthens. Small groves, not large plantation. These olives have been here a long time, their trunks thick and twisted, their roots deep in the limestone soil. European goldfinches flit along the field margins, feeding on thistle seeds. They are small, bright birds flashing red and gold as they move between the dry stems. Their call is a liquid twittering, cheerful and constant, a sound that belongs to these autumn field edges. The terrain here is composed of Eocene limestone, marl, and sandstone. Marine sedimentary rocks deposited 40 to 55 million years ago, when this entire region lay beneath a shallow sea at the margin of the Iberian Plate. The folding and uplift that created the Pyrenees tilted these ancient strata, producing the rolling hills you are walking through now. You are walking across the floor of a vanished ocean. Every stone beneath your feet was once sediment drifting slowly to the bottom of a warm, shallow sea. It is a thought that makes the present moment feel both vast and quiet. 8 kilometers from Puente la Reina. The path begins to climb towards Cirauqui. The ascent is not steep, but it is steady, and you feel the change in your legs. The vineyard rows fall away below you, their autumn colors deepening as the angle of the light shifts. A narrow paved lane enters the village from below, winding steeply upward between stone houses. The houses are built directly into the rock, their walls the same pale limestone as the hillside. It is difficult to tell where the natural stone ends and the constructed stone begins. Cool air funnels through the narrow medieval streets as you climb. The buildings on either side block the sun, and the temperature drops noticeably. Your footsteps echo against the stone walls. The sound bounces upward and fades. Cirauqui has about 200 inhabitants. The streets spiral to the summit, past carved lintels and timber balconies and doorways worn smooth by generations of hands. Flower pots line the windowsills. A cat watches you from a stone step, perfectly still, its eyes half open. At the highest point of the village, you reach the Church of San Roman. It was built around the year 1200, during the transition between Romanesque and Gothic, and its portal is one of the most remarkable doorways on the entire Camino de Santiago. The doorway is framed by a multi-lobed pointed arch, its curves decorated with horseshoe subarches of Mudéjar influence. Geometric Cistercian patterns alternate with carved capitals depicting lions and griffins. The effect is intricate and strange, a meeting of Christian and Islamic artistic traditions in a single stone frame. This portal is one of only 3 multi-lobed doorways on the entire Santiago route. The others are in Puente la Reina, which you left this morning, and in Estella, where you will arrive this evening. 3 doorways, all in Navarra, all bearing the mark of Mudéjar artisans. Mudéjar artisans were Muslim craftsmen working under Christian rule after the Christian reconquest of the Iberian Peninsula pushed southward through the 11th and 12th centuries. Many skilled Muslim builders and carvers remained in the newly Christian territories. They continued to practice their art and their geometric patterns, their horseshoe arches, their love of intricate surface decoration became woven into the fabric of Christian buildings across Navarra and Aragon. You descend through the final streets of Cirauqui, the houses thinning, the hillside opening up. A woman hangs laundry from a balcony, white sheets catching the light. She does not look up. The sheets billow gently in the breeze bright against the gray stone. You stand before the portal for a long moment. The stone is warm in the morning light. The carvings are 800 years old, and the edges have softened, the details blurring slowly into abstraction. But the horseshoe arches are still clear, still graceful, still carrying the memory of a culture that shaped this place and then disappeared from it. From the churchyard, the view is extraordinary. A panorama of vineyards, golden fields, and red-roofed villages stretching in every direction. The landscape is a patchwork of color: crimson vine leaves, pale stubble, dark green holm oaks on the distant hillsides, and the gray-blue line of the horizon beyond. You can see the path you have walked this morning. The valley of the Arga, the rooftops of Manaru, the vineyard-covered slopes, and ahead, to the west, the land descends toward a broad valley where the ancient Roman road will carry you onward. A fountain at the base of the village provides water. You fill your bottle. The water is cold and clean, drawn from somewhere deep in the limestone beneath the hill. You drink, and the cold spreads through your chest. Your footsteps on the Roman road have a different sound. Not the soft crunch of gravel or the flat slap of pavement, but a solid, resonant tap. Stone meeting stone through the sole of your boot. It is a sound that connects you, through the simplest of physics, to every person who has ever walked this way. You leave Cirauqui on the far side, descending the western slope of the hill. And here, beneath your feet, the path changes. The gravel and pavement give way to something older, something much older. Large, flat slabs of pale gray limestone, fitted tightly together, stretching ahead of you down the hillside in a broad, deliberate line. The surface is uneven but purposeful. Each stone has been chosen, shaped, and placed with care. This is the Roman road. The Via Agrippa, a Roman highway built in the 1st century, connecting Bordeaux, which the Romans called Burdigala, to Astorga, which they called Asturica Augusta, a road that once carried legions and merchants and administrators across the spine of the Iberian Peninsula, and now carries you. The limestone slabs are pale gray, almost white in the morning light. They are dense and heavy, each one requiring several people to lift into place. The Roman engineers who built this road did not think in terms of seasons or years. They thought in terms of centuries. They built for permanence, and they achieved it. You step onto the first stone and feel the difference immediately. The surface is rough but worn, the edges of each slab rounded by 2,000 years of footsteps and weather. The texture is dense and solid beneath your boots. There is a certainty to it, a permanence that gravel and dirt cannot match. The paving stones were laid using standard Roman engineering methods. First, a foundation of large flat stones, then a layer of compacted gravel for drainage, and finally, the carefully fitted surface slabs, cut from local limestone, pale gray, dense, and durable. The same qualities that made this stone useful 2,000 years ago make it useful today. The holm oaks along the hillside are ancient trees. Their trunks are thick and deeply furrowed, their bark almost black. The evergreen canopy casts a dense shade, and the temperature drops several degrees when you pass beneath them. The air smells of dry leaves and resin. Between the paving stones, small plants have found their way. Tufts of grass, tiny ferns, a thread of wild thyme. Life presses upward through every crack, every gap, every space that time has opened. The road is not dead. It is a living surface, a collaboration between human intention and natural persistence. The Via Agrippa connected Burdigala to Asturica Augusta, a distance of more than 700 kilometers through some of the most difficult terrain in the Western Empire. It carried trade goods, military dispatches, tax revenues, and pilgrims, long before the Christian pilgrimage to Santiago existed. The road was already ancient when the first medieval pilgrim walked it. Some of the stones were repaired in the Middle Ages. You can see the difference if you look carefully. The Roman stones are larger, more precisely cut. Their surface is worn to a smooth polish. The medieval repairs are smaller, rougher, fitted into gaps where the original paving had cracked or shifted. Drainage channels cut into the stone run along both sides of the road, designed to carry rainwater away from the surface. After 2,000 years, they still function. When it rains, the water flows along these channels exactly as the Roman engineers intended. There is something deeply satisfying about a design that outlasts the civilization that created it. But the essence of the road is Roman, 2,000 years old. You are walking on the same stones that Roman soldiers walked on. The same stones that carried the weight of ox carts and marching columns and barefoot pilgrims and mounted knights. The thought settles into you slowly, like warmth. This is the best preserved stretch of Roman road on the entire Camino Francis. Other sections have been buried or plowed over or quarried for building stone. But here on this hillside below Cirauqui, the road has survived. It has outlasted the empire that built it. Iberian wall lizards bask on the warm paving stones. Small, quick, gray-brown creatures, perfectly still until you come within a meter, then vanishing into the cracks between the slabs with a flick of the tail. They have been doing this for as long as the stones have been here. Longer, perhaps. Rosemary grows along the dry, rocky margins of the road. Pale blue flowers lingering into autumn. When you brush against it, the scent rises sharp and clean, cutting through the warm, heavy air of the vineyard country. Wild thyme carpets the stony ground beside the rosemary, releasing its fragrance when your foot falls near it. The road descends steadily. The stones are warm under your feet where the sun has reached them, cool in the patches of shade cast by the holm oaks that line the hillside. The oaks are evergreen, their dark canopy providing shelter on the exposed slope. Their acorns litter the path. 11 kilometers from Puente la Reina. The Roman road carries you down to the valley floor, and here you find a small bridge of dressed stone crossing the Regata de Iguste, a narrow stream that trickles between mossy banks. This bridge, too, is Roman, or at least its foundations are. The stream is barely a meter across. You could step over it, but the Romans built a bridge because that is what the Romans did. They built roads and bridges that would last not for a season or a generation, but for centuries. And they were right. You pause on the bridge. The water beneath is clear and slow, barely moving over a bed of small, pale stones. The sound it makes is the quietest of all water sounds. A whisper, a breath. You could miss it entirely if you were not listening. Think of the people who have crossed this bridge. Roman engineers inspecting their road. Medieval pilgrims on their way to Santiago, footsore and faithful. Farmers driving livestock to market. Soldiers in every century. And now you, standing here in the quiet morning, listening to the water. The Roman road ends a short distance beyond the bridge, giving way to a dirt and gravel farm track through open fields. The transition is abrupt. One moment you are walking on stones laid in the 1st century. The next, you are on ordinary earth. The ground feels softer, less certain. The valley opens ahead. Flat farmland stretches between low hills, the cereal stubble catching the light in shades of pale golden straw. The harvested fields have a peaceful, spent quality, as though they are resting after the effort of summer. The dry rustle of the breeze through the cereal stubble is the only sound. It is a papery, whispering noise, the stalks brushing against one another in the slight current of air. It comes and goes, rising and fading with the breeze, never quite the same twice. European bee-eaters perch on the telegraph wires ahead, a row of iridescent birds, their plumage a mosaic of turquoise, chestnut, and gold. They are gathering. In a few weeks, they will leave Spain entirely, migrating south across the Strait of Gibraltar to spend the winter in Africa. But for now they sit quietly in the autumn light, preening and waiting, as though the journey ahead is of no particular concern. You understand the feeling. 14 kilometers from Puente la Reina, 7.5 remain. You reach the quiet hamlet of Lorca, a handful of stone houses gathered around a single lane. The village is small and still. A dog watches you from a doorway. Geraniums bloom in a window box, vivid red against the gray stone. The Church of El Salvador stands at the center of the hamlet. A 12th century Romanesque church, simple and solid, with a stone nave and carved capitals. The door is open. Inside, the air is cool and dim and smells of candle wax and old wood. The carved capitals are rough and sincere. Leaves and faces and animals, cut by hands that were skilled but not refined. The stone has the warm, honeyed color of the local limestone. 8 centuries of candlelight and silence have given the walls a gentle patina, a softness that new stone does not have. Near the edge of Lorca, there are ruins of a medieval pilgrim hospital. The hospital of Arandagoyan sheltered travelers here from the 11th century onward. Pilgrims arriving exhausted from the long descent along the Roman road found food, water, and a bed. The building is gone now, but the kindness it represented is not. The concept of the pilgrim hospital was central to the Camino for centuries. These were not hospitals in the modern sense. They were hostels, refuges, places where anyone walking to Santiago could find shelter without payment. They were funded by monasteries, by wealthy patrons, by the belief that offering comfort to a stranger was a holy act. The flat farmland between the villages is beautiful in its simplicity. No drama, no spectacle, just the gentle roll of the earth, the geometry of the planted rows, the soft colors of autumn. It is a landscape that does not demand attention. It offers it, quietly, to anyone willing to look. You leave Lorca on a dirt track heading west through open fields. The path is flat and easy. The stubble fields stretch away on both sides, and the sky is enormous above you, pale blue deepening to white near the horizon. A gray partridge bursts from cover in a vineyard row with a sharp clatter of wings, then drops back into the vines and is gone. The path between Lorca and Villatuerta is one of the quietest stretches of the day. No villages, no landmarks, no sounds beyond the breeze in the stubble and the occasional bird. Just walking. Just the rhythm of your steps on the dirt track, steady and even, a metronome of forward motion. There are moments on the Camino when the walking itself becomes the destination. When you stop thinking about where you're going and simply exist in the act of movement. Your feet find their own pace, your arms swing in counterpoint, your breathing synchronizes with your stride. The body knows what to do, the mind can rest. A red kite appears again, or perhaps a different one. It circles slowly above the fields, riding the thermal currents that rise from the sun-warmed earth. Its forked tail adjusts constantly, tilting left, then right, maintaining its position in the sky with effortless precision. The sun is higher now, and the air has warmed. You can feel it on the back of your neck, on your forearms. It is not the intense heat of summer, but a gentle autumnal warmth, the kind that makes you want to slow down rather than seek shade. You slow down. The river valleys of the Arga and the Iga, which you are crossing between, are floored with quaternary alluvial deposits. Clay, silt, and gravel washed down from the surrounding hills over thousands of years. These deep, fertile soils, rich in iron oxide, give the plowed fields their characteristic red-brown color. It is these soils that support the intensive viticulture and cereal farming of the region. The same red earth that stains the soles of your boots has fed the people of Navarra for millennia. You are walking through a working landscape, a place that has been cultivated and tended without interruption since before the Romans arrived. Boxwood hedges line the farm lanes between the fields, their small, dark leaves dense and glossy. Mediterranean scrub oak grows on the drier margins. The vegetation here is adapted to the long, dry summers and the limestone soil. Everything is tough, aromatic, slow-growing. 17 kilometers behind you now. The village of Villatuerta appears ahead, divided into two neighborhoods by the Iranzu River. You can hear the river before you see it. A quiet, steady murmur, the sound of water flowing over stones. You cross a paved road and then a bridge over the Iranzu. The river is small but lively, tumbling over a shallow bed of pale cobbles. The sound it makes is brighter than the Arga this morning, more animated. A cheerful, chattering sound, like a conversation heard from another room. The two neighborhoods of Villatuerta face each other across the Iranzu. Stone houses on both banks, connected by bridges that have been rebuilt many times over the centuries. The river is the spine of the village, its constant murmur the background to every conversation, every meal, every night's sleep. Villatuerta has Roman origins. Funerary inscriptions found in the surrounding fields attest to a settlement here in the centuries after the road was built. People lived and died and were commemorated in stone beside this same river 2,000 years ago. The village has a long history of winemaking, dating to at least the 11th century. The tradition continues today. Vineyards stretch toward Estella in the distance, their autumn colors softening the landscape into a quilt of crimson, amber, and green. The Church of the Assumption stands on the banks of the Iranzu, a 13th century building rebuilt in later centuries but retaining its medieval foundations. The stones at the base of the walls are older, darker, more weathered than the ones above. You can read the history of the building in its layers. You pass through Villa Tuerta and continue west on a gravel path through vineyards and farmland. 4.5 kilometers remain. The afternoon light is golden now, warm and low, casting long shadows across the vineyard rows. The air smells of dry earth and ripe fruit. Swallows circle above the path, swooping low, their wings cutting sharp arcs through the air. They are feeding on insects stirred up by the warmth of the afternoon. Their flight is effortless and precise, each turn and dive executed without hesitation. In the distance, you can see a cluster of buildings at the foot of a wooded hillside, the monastery of Cirauqui, one of the oldest Benedictine foundations on the Iberian Peninsula, with records dating to the year 958. The monastery of Cirauqui has known many lives. Founded as a Benedictine house, it became a center of learning, then a university that educated students for nearly 3 centuries. When the university was closed in 1824, the building became a military hospital. Then, for a long time, it was nothing. Empty rooms, echoing corridors, dust settling on stone. The monastery served as a pilgrim hospice for centuries, offering shelter and food to those walking to Santiago. Later, between 1544 and 1824, it became a university that rivaled Salamanca, then a military hospital. Then, in 1985, it was vacated entirely. It stands now in a state of slow restoration, grand and silent. But the monastery's most famous feature is not the building itself. It is the wine fountain. On the wall facing the Camino, the adjacent Bodegas Irache installed 2 spouts in 1991. One for water, one for red wine. Both are free. The wine fountain is a small thing, really. 2 metal spouts set into a stone wall, a tile mural depicting the Camino. A drain in the pavement below, but it has become one of the most beloved landmarks on the entire pilgrimage, not because of the wine, which is ordinary, because of the gesture. The wine fountain continues a tradition of hospitality to pilgrims that began here over 1,000 years ago. The monks gave food and shelter. The bodegas give wine. The gesture is the same, a welcome offered without condition to anyone passing through. You stand before the fountain. The stone wall is stained dark where the wine has splashed and dried over the years. A small sign above the spouts asks only that you drink responsibly and continue your journey in good spirits. The wine is young and red, tasting of the same grapes you have been walking through all morning. You drink, the wine is cool and slightly tart. It is not remarkable wine, but it is free, and it is given kindly, and that makes it taste better than it otherwise might. The gravel path continues through the vineyards toward Estella. The town is visible now, its medieval skyline rising above the trees along the Iga River. Church towers and stone rooftops, golden in the late afternoon sun. The sight of your destination, after a long day of walking, brings a quiet satisfaction that needs no words. You can feel the distance you have walked today in the soles of your feet. A dull warmth, not quite pain. The accumulated pressure of 21 kilometers on earth and stone and gravel. Your body is keeping count even when your mind has stopped. Church bells reach you across the valley. Deep, slow, ancient. They have been marking time in Estella for 800 years. The sound arrives softened by distance, more a feeling than a sound, a low vibration in the warm air. The path becomes urban pavement as you enter Estella. The gravel gives way to stone, and the first buildings appear on either side. The walls radiate warmth. The golden sandstone of medieval Navarra, heated by a full day of sun, releasing its stored warmth into the cooling air. The cobblestones of the Calle Mayor are worn into shallow grooves by centuries of cartwheels. You can feel the grooves through the soles of your boots, 2 parallel depressions running the length of the street. 1,000 years of commerce, compressed into the topography of stone. The old town climbs the hillside on the left bank of the Iga, its medieval streets layered one above another like the strata of the geological past you have been walking through all day. The lowest streets are the newest, the highest the oldest. The town grew downhill over the centuries, spreading from its defensive summit toward the commerce of the river. The Frankish settlers who arrived in the 11th century built their quarter along the river, where trade was easiest. They spoke Occitan, a language of southern France. They built in the style they knew, with wide arched doorways and carved stone facades. Their influence is visible everywhere along the Calle Mayor, in the proportions of the buildings, in the shapes of the windows. The smell of roasting peppers drifts from somewhere nearby. Pimientos del Piquillo, the small sweet red peppers of Navarra, roasted over open flames until their skins blacken and peel away. The smell is rich and smoky and warm. The smell of a kitchen preparing for evening, of food being made with care and without hurry. Estella, Lizarra in Basque, a substantial town of some 14,000 people, straddling the Iga River. You have arrived, 21.5 kilometers from where you started this morning, standing on the ancient bridge over the Arga. The town was founded in 1090, when King Sancho Ramirez of Pamplona granted a charter to the settlement beside the older fortified Basque town of Lizarra. The king had a plan. He deliberately routed the Camino de Santiago through Estella, knowing that pilgrims meant commerce, and commerce meant prosperity. He invited Frankish settlers to populate the town, mainly Occitans from Auvergne and Limousin in what is now southern France. He granted them tax privileges and land. They came, and they built, and the town grew quickly into a prosperous trading center. At its height, Estella was a town of 3 communities: the Franks in their quarter along the Calle Mayor, the Navarrese in the older settlement of Lizarra on the hilltop above, and a Jewish community established in the late 11th century that became one of the most prosperous in all of Navarra. Each community had its own parish, its own laws, its own language, and yet they shared the same streets, the same river, the same marketplace. The town was a meeting point, a place where the cultures of medieval Europe intersected and, for a time, coexisted. The cloister of San Pedro de la Rua is open to the sky where the missing galleries once stood. Grass grows in the enclosed garden, untended and peaceful. The surviving columns cast long shadows in the evening light, their carved capitals telling stories to no one with infinite patience. The 12th century Codex Calixtinus, the medieval pilgrim guide likely written by the French monk Aymeric Picard around 1140, praised Estella as a town of good bread, excellent wine, abundant meat and fish, and full of all felicities. Picard was less generous about the Navarrese people in general, accusing them of eating without cutlery, but he admired the town. You walk along the Calle Mayor, the old pilgrim street, through the Frankish quarter. The buildings on either side are medieval and Renaissance, their facades of golden sandstone, their doorways carved with coats of arms and merchant symbols. The smell of roasting peppers and baking bread drifts from the kitchens. Most Romanesque buildings that survive are churches. Stone churches endured because communities continued to use them, continued to repair them, continued to invest in their preservation. But secular buildings, palaces and houses and market halls were abandoned when they were no longer needed, and they crumbled. This palace is the exception. It survived because Estella never stopped being a town of importance. The San Miguel portal faces north, which means it never receives direct sunlight. The carvings have been preserved by shadow, protected from the weathering that the south-facing walls have endured. The detail remains sharp after 8 centuries. The feathers on the archangel's wings, the folds of the women's robes, the empty tomb carved from stone and yet somehow conveying absence. The street leads you to the Plaza de San Martin, the heart of the old town, and here, Facing you across the square stands the palace of the kings of Navarra. The scent of the river reaches you, cool mineral, faintly green. It is the smell of water that has traveled through limestone, picking up the dissolved memory of the ancient seabed, carrying it downstream toward the Ebro, toward the Mediterranean, toward the open sea. It is a 12th century building, and it is one of only 2 surviving examples of Romanesque civil architecture in all of Spain. Not a church, not a monastery, a palace. A building where people lived and governed and made decisions that shaped the kingdom. And it has survived for nearly 900 years. The facade is elegant and restrained. 2 stories of round-arched windows, dressed stone, carved capitals. The proportions are balanced and harmonious. It was built to impress, but it impresses quietly, through grace rather than scale. One carved capital on the facade depicts the legendary combat between Roland and the giant Farragut. This episode comes from the Pseudo-Turpin Chronicle, a medieval text that was enormously popular among pilgrims walking to Santiago. Roland, the Christian knight, defeats the pagan giant through faith and cleverness. The carving is worn but legible, the 2 figures locked in their ancient struggle. The palace was declared a national monument in 1931. Today it houses the Gustavo de Mastu Art Museum, but you do not go inside. You simply stand in the square and look at the building in the evening light. The stone is warm and golden pigeons coo softly in the eaves. Across the square, a stairway climbs steeply to the church of San Pedro de la Rua, the oldest church in Estella built in the 12th century. Its portico of lobed arches shows the same Arab influence you saw this morning in Cirauqui, the pattern repeating, the same thread woven through the fabric of Navarra. The church has a Romanesque cloister, considered one of the finest in Navarra. Twin columns support intricately carved capitals depicting biblical scenes, foliage, and fantastical beasts. The craftsmanship is extraordinary. Each capital is a world in miniature, dense with detail, alive with imagination. Only 2 of the 4 galleries survive. The western and northern wings were destroyed in 1572, when the castle of Zalatambor on the hill above was demolished by order of Philip II. The explosion brought down half the cloister. What remains is beautiful and incomplete, a masterpiece interrupted. There is a particular kind of beauty in survival. These 2 galleries have stood open to the sky where the other 2 once joined them, exposed and unfinished, for over 400 years, and they are no less graceful for it, perhaps more so. Somewhere in the town, someone is playing a guitar. The notes drift down toward the river, fragmentary and unhurried, a melody that starts and starts again. It is not a performance. It is someone playing for themselves in a room with an open window, letting the music escape into the evening. You descend the stairs and cross the square again. The evening light slants across the golden stone, deepening the shadows in the carved doorways, warming the walls to a color that is almost amber. The air is cooling. The day's warmth is retreating slowly into the stone. On a terrace above the river, the Church of San Miguel occupies a commanding position. It was begun in the late 12th century, and its north portal, created between 1187 and 1196, is considered a jewel of late Romanesque art in Spain. 5 round archivolts frame the doorway, each decorated with figurative sculpture. On either side, masterful stone reliefs depict the Archangel Michael defeating the devil on the left, and the 3 Marys visiting the empty tomb on the right. The figures are expressive and fluid, already reaching toward the Gothic sensibility that would follow. These carvings were made by hands that understood both the weight of stone and the lightness of fabric, the tension of muscle and the stillness of grief. They are among the finest Romanesque sculptures in Navarra, and they have been here, exposed to rain and sun and frost for more than 800 years. You walk down toward the river. The Iga flows through the center of Estella, beneath old stone bridges, its water murmuring over a bed of worn cobbles. The sound is constant and soothing, a low accompaniment to the evening quiet of the town. You find a bench on the riverbank and sit. The stone is warm beneath you. Your legs are tired, your feet are heavy. 21.5 kilometers of walking from the bridge over the Arga to the banks of the Ega. 2 rivers, 1 day, 1,000 years of history between them. The Jewish quarter of Estella was established in the late 11th century. For 200 years, it thrived. Jewish families ran businesses, owned property, contributed to the intellectual and commercial life of the town. They lived alongside the Franks and the Navarrese in a delicate, imperfect balance. The Iga is a generous river. It gives Estella its water, its beauty, its sense of peace. The town was built around it, shaped by it, sustained by it. Without the river, there would be no town. Without the town, the river would flow on regardless. There is a lesson in that, if you want one. But you do not need to want anything tonight. The massacre of 1328 was not unique to Estella. It was part of a wider pattern across medieval Europe, where Jewish communities were attacked during times of political instability, blamed for misfortunes they had no part in. The pattern repeated in country after country, century after century. Estella's story is one chapter in a much longer and darker book. In 1328, that balance broke. A wave of anti-Jewish violence swept across Navarra, triggered by a disputed royal succession. Thousands of Jewish people across the kingdom were killed. The community in Estella was devastated. The quarter was later repopulated, but it never fully recovered. The memory lingers in the streets, quiet and heavy, like the smell of old stone. History is not always beautiful. The Camino passes through places of great kindness and places of great cruelty, sometimes the same place. Estella is both. It is a town that welcomed pilgrims from across Europe and also destroyed its own neighbors. To walk through it honestly is to hold both truths at once. The river does not judge. It flows on, as it has always flowed, carrying the reflected light of the evening sky downstream. The water is clear and shallow. You can see the stones on the bottom, smooth and pale, worn by the same patient current that has been shaping them since long before the town was built. The air cools around you. The sun is low now, touching the tops of the buildings on the far bank, painting the upper walls in shades of gold and amber while the lower streets settle into shadow. The transition from day to evening is slow and gentle, one shade melting into the next. Swallows circle the bell towers of the churches, swooping low over the river, catching the last insects of the day in their wide, soft mouths. Their flight paths cross and recross, tracing invisible patterns against the darkening sky. You have been walking for 5 days now, 5 stages of the Camino Frances. You crossed the Pyrenees on the first day, descending through beech forest into Roncesvalles. You followed the Arga River through green valleys and quiet villages. You climbed the Alto del Perdón and saw the bronze pilgrims standing on the ridge against the sky. Your shadow stretches long before you as you walk the final streets. It reaches the walls of the buildings ahead, climbing them, dissolving into the general shadow of evening. Soon there will be no shadows at all, only the soft, even darkness of night. And today, you walked from one river to another, through vineyards and cereal fields, over a Roman road 2,000 years old, past hilltop villages and Romanesque churches, to arrive here on the banks of the Iga, in a town that the medieval pilgrims called full of all felicity. This is the end of the first section of the Camino, the Pyrenees and Navarra, 5 stages, 115 kilometers, from the foot of the mountains to the wine country of the Iga Valley. A chapter is ending. Tomorrow you will continue west into a new landscape. The terrain will change. The accent will change. The character of the villages will shift. But that is tomorrow. Tonight, you are here, beside the river, in the warm stone town of Estella, and there is nowhere else you need to be. The river murmurs beneath the bridges. It is a sound without beginning or ending, continuous and soft, the kind of sound that fills a silence without breaking it. You let it wash over you. Your body is tired in the particular way that only walking can produce. Not the sharp fatigue of exertion, but a deep, even weariness that reaches into every muscle. Your feet are heavy. Your shoulders have settled. Your breathing is slow and steady. The evening air carries the sound of the town settling into night. Shutters being drawn, a TV murmuring behind a wall. Footsteps on the pavement, unhurried, growing softer as they move away. The town contracts gently, drawing inward, like a hand slowly closing. The Iga is a smaller river than the Arga, but it has the same patient quality. It does not rush. It moves at the pace of the landscape, shaped by the same limestone, fed by the same rains, flowing toward the same distant sea. You followed one river out of the morning and arrived at another by evening. The Camino is, in many ways, a journey from river to river. The first stars appear above the rooftops. Faint at first, barely distinguishable from the pale blue of the sky, then slowly brightening as the light drains away. One by one, they emerge, as though they had been there all along, waiting for the darkness to reveal them. The church bells ring the hour, a single, deep note resonating across the river valley, echoing off the stone walls of the old town. It fades slowly, the vibration lingering in the air long after the sound has gone. Then silence, then the river again. Think of the road you walked today. The smooth stone of the Romanesque bridge at dawn, the vineyard-covered slopes with their crimson leaves, the spiral streets of Cirauqui, the ancient Roman paving stones beneath your feet, the wine fountain at Urache, the golden facade of the palace in the evening light. Each image softens as you hold it. The details blur, the colors mute, the edges dissolve. You are not trying to remember. You are letting the day settle like sediment in still water, drifting slowly downward. The warmth drains slowly from the stone. You can feel it changing beneath your hands if you touch the wall beside you. The stone that was warm an hour ago is now merely cool. By morning it will be cold, and then the sun will return and the stone will warm again, as it has done every day for 900 years. You think of the Roman road. Those pale gray slabs, fitted together with such care, carrying travelers across this landscape for 2 millennia. You walked on them today. Your feet touched the same stone that Roman feet touched. The thought does not make you feel small. It makes you feel connected, part of a line of travelers stretching back through time. The Camino has been walked for over 1,000 years. You are one of millions. And yet the walk is yours. No one has taken exactly the steps you took today at exactly the time you took them, noticing exactly the things you noticed. The path is shared. The experience is your own. The stone beneath you is warm. The air around you is cool. The river flows on. These are the only facts that matter now. 5 days of walking. 5 days of putting one foot in front of the other, of moving through the world at the oldest human pace. You have not rushed. You have not hurried. You have simply walked, and the world has unfolded around you, slowly, generously, without demand. The Pyrenees are behind you now. The high passes, the beech forests, the mountain mist. Navarra is behind you too, or nearly. Its vineyards, its hilltop villages, its golden stone, all of it held in the quiet space between memory and sleep. The river murmurs on. The stars brighten. The town settles into its ancient evening quiet. the same quiet it has known for 1,000 years. The same quiet it will know for 1,000 more. Your eyes are heavy now, let them be heavy. There is nothing left to see tonight. Only the dark shapes of the rooftops against the sky, and the faint silver thread of the river below, and the stars turning slowly above you. The first section of the Camino is complete. You have walked from the French border to the heart of Navarra. You have crossed mountains and rivers, followed ancient roads, passed through villages that have sheltered pilgrims for 1,000 years. And now you rest. The Ega flows beneath the bridges of Estella. The sound is constant and quiet, a gentle, unbroken murmur that asks nothing of you. It does not ask you to listen. It does not ask you to stay awake. It simply flows, as rivers do, carrying the darkness downstream. Your breathing slows, your body grows heavier. The warmth of the stone beneath you, the coolness of the air around you, the sound of the water below. These sensations blend together, softening, dissolving, becoming one quiet feeling that has no name. Sleep is not far now. It is already here, at the edges, waiting patiently, like the river, like the stars. Let it come, let the day go, let the road go. Let Estella hold you in its ancient quiet, in the warmth of its golden stone, beside the murmur of the Ega. The 5th day is done. The first chapter of the pilgrimage is complete. Rest now, sleep well. The road will be there in the morning. You have walked from Puente la Reina to Estella, 21 kilometers of Roman roads and vineyards, hilltop villages and quiet river valleys. 5 days now since Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. The Pyrenees are behind you. Navarra is behind you. Rest here on the banks of the Ega. The first chapter of the pilgrimage is complete. Tonight there is only the river, the old stones, and sleep. This episode was produced by The Long Road. Sleep well and good night.